Welcome, everyone, to Canyon City Planning Commission, Wednesday, June 26, 2019. I now call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Denise, will you call roll?
Certainly. Good evening. Chairman Maloney,
Here?
Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Harmon,
Here.
Commissioner Ledoux, here. Commissioner Shegley,
Here.
Commissioner Brandon Smith, Commissioner Randy Smith.
Here. Okay, thank you. At this time, I now ask for approval of the minutes from the February 27th, 2019 Planning Commission.
So moved.
Before I make the motion, are there any corrections? Okay. I need a second, please.
I'll second that.
Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Harmon,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Chairman Maloney,
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux,
Aye.
Commissioner Shegley,
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Item 4A, annexation and zoning, new creations in property at 2990 East Main Street, case NOS, numbers? Numbers.
Numbers, yes, sorry.
ANX 2019-001 and ZON 2019-004. I guess we'll start with I'll open the public hearing and we'll start with a staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Our first public hearing this evening is a combined annexation and zoning request. This is for the property known as the New Creations Inn, and it is located at 2990 East Main Street. The subject property is a 0.971 acre parcel located on the south side of East Main Street. The property is not currently within the city limits, but has sufficient contiguity to existing municipal boundaries to meet the statutory requirements for annexation. The property was originally developed in the late 1940s as a motor court motel. As a result, it features several buildings on site surrounding a main office building. One of the residential wings on the property is currently undergoing reconstruction. The current use of the property through the neighboring Evangelical Free Church is as a multi-family residential facility to aid homeless individuals and families who are attempting to reestablish themselves. In terms of the request to annex the property, the aforementioned Evangelical Free Church submitted an annexation petition to the city in the format required by state statute in May. Council accepted the petition at their June 3rd meeting and set the public hearing date for annexation on July 15th. The property is within a district established by Council in 2009 as a priority annexation area. This policy was established particularly because these were areas which logically should annex, and partially because the annexation of these areas would regularize the city's municipal boundaries and facilitate delivery of municipal services such as police protection and road maintenance. As mentioned on the previous slide, this parcel has sufficient connection to existing municipal boundaries to meet the 1/6 contiguity requirement specified in state statute. And it has less than 10 acres in area, so it will not require the applicant to submit an annexation impact report to Fremont County. Staff therefore finds that this annexation is consistent with community goals. Concurrent with the request to annex the property is a request to zone the property. As the Planning Commission is aware, all parcels within Canyon City are required to have a zoning which is recognized by the Canyon City Municipal Code. This property is located along the East Main Street corridor. Properties along this corridor, which have previously annexed to the city, have been given a C, General Commercial District zoning designation. This designation is also appropriate for the subject property, given that it has historically been used for commercial functions. Even today, given that it is being used for multifamily purposes, that use is permitted in the C, General Commercial Zone District. Continuing the analysis of the zoning request, Note that although not applicable to this zoning request, the property currently enjoys a B business zoning in unincorporated Fremont County. A commercial zoning at this location would also be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Although it has not been updated since 2001, the comprehensive plan identified the entirety of the East Main Street corridor as a future commercial area. Finally, C, General Commercial District zoning designation would continue the precedent established by the annexation and the zoning of the NNS subdivision and the Great Western Storage properties, both of which are recent annexations into the city. And with that, staff recommends that following a public hearing where Planning Commission can hear public testimony regarding the proposed annexation and zoning, that Planning Commission cite the 4 findings of fact contained in the staff report concerning the city's jurisdiction to act on the proposed annexation, as well as the appropriateness of the annexation itself. Staff also recommends that Planning Commission recommend council approve the requested annexation. And similarly, with request to the C General Commercial Zoning District, staff recommends that Planning Commission cite the 4 findings of fact contained in the staff report concerning the city's jurisdiction to act on the zoning request, and as well as the fact that C General Commercial is an appropriate zone district for this property. Staff also recommends that Planning Commission recommend council approve the requested C General Commercial Zone District. That would conclude staff's presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that Planning Commission may have. Present to speak on behalf of this project is Dee Dee Clement, who is representing the property owner, and the consultant on this product, Matt Koch of Cornerstone Surveying.
Thanks, Patrick. Before I move on, I didn't read the provisions. Is that required for the minutes?
I would think you probably want to do that, yes.
Okay, let's skip back. The provisions of the City Municipal Code, and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan of the City of Kansas City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as if set forth verbatim. Would anyone, would the applicants like to come up and, do you guys have anything to say?
I don't see any questions.
Okay. First, do we have any questions of staff? Yes, sir.
So I do. The as-is doesn't address the sidewalk, is that correct? And is there any desire for that to be addressed?
There is no desire, at least that has been expressed by the engineering department, for a sidewalk at this location. To the extent that there are going to be improvements in the future to Main Street, a sidewalk will be revisited at that time.
Any other questions from the commission? Any questions of the applicants? Okay. Now close this public hearing. So on this one, we have 2 motions and 2 seconds. So we have the annexation and we also have the zone change. So we'll start with the findings of fact regarding the annexation of the new creations in property.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt the 4 findings of fact regarding the annexation of the new creations in property as stated in our packet.
I have a second.
I second.
Thank you. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley.
Aye.
Chairman Maloney.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux.
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion and a second for recommendation to council, please.
And Mr. Chairman, I will make that motion as well. I move the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the annexation of the new creations in property located at 2990 East Main Street.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Chairman Maloney.
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux.
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith.
Aye.
Thank you. Part 2, findings of facts regarding the zoning of the new creations in property to C General Commercial District. I need a motion and a second based on findings of fact, please.
Mr. Chairman, I will make that motion.
Thank
I
you,
move the
Commissioner.
Planning Commission adopt the 4 findings of fact regarding the zoning of the new creations in property to C General Commercial District as defined in Section 17.12.130 of the CCMS. MC, excuse me.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Harmon?
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley?
Aye.
Okay. This time, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second for recommendation to council.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Harmon.
I move the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the zoning of the new creations in property to C General Commercial District as defined in Section 17.12.130 of the CCMS.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Before I say Denise, call roll, is there any discussion about any of these items? No. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Harmon?
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley?
Aye.
Okay, all motions pass. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Okay. 4B. Process changes to final plat and final planned unit development applications. I'm assuming we have a presentation from staff.
We do. I did not prepare a PowerPoint presentation for this, as this is reflecting changes to the way we process these kinds of applications, as opposed to an actual application for you to review. Some months ago, in a brainstorming session about how we could make the land use process a bit more user-friendly for the development community, one of the things that was pointed out was that between preliminary and final plats and preliminary and final PUDs, there is a requirement that both of them have to go to public hearings before both Planning Commission and Council. On the back end with the final, it has to be completely consistent with what was approved at preliminary, and that additional time in process for the hearings with notice requirements and whatnot can add 60 days or more to the period of time that an application is in process. So our recommendation was, why don't we make the final for both final plats and final PUDs administrative in nature, assuming that a finding can be made that the final we are receiving for plat or PUD is consistent with what was approved at preliminary plan. This was generally seen as a positive step for the processing of land use applications for major subdivisions and major PUDs. And we took this to Council at their June 5th General Government Committee meeting, and Council also endorsed this idea. The way it would work is very simple. At the preliminary stage where the public hearing is held, that's where all of the items that are going to be dedicated as part of public improvements, streets, drainage infrastructure, if there are any parks associated with the development, all of that is known. And those dedications become part of what a vesting approval will be. That vesting approval occurs at preliminary plan under these proposed changes, and then is valid for a period of 1 year, against which time an applicant will have the opportunity to file a final. That final would then be confirmed to be consistent with what was approved at preliminary. If it's not consistent, if it is marginally different from what Planning Commission and Council approved, it would have to go back through the process for reapproval as a preliminary. If it is consistent with what was approved, at that point it could be processed administratively and then at the back end eventually recorded. And all of those vested property rights would still be in place. There's also a provision in there that will grant a 1-year extension to the vesting right should the zoning administrator, who is to wit our city administrator, finds that there's sufficient cause to grant that 1-year extension. So the hope is that in doing this, we are saving some time on the back end of the development of the land use review process. If you all agree with this following your deliberations, what we are asking that you do is adopt Resolution Number 2 of 2019, and then also make a recommendation to council on the ordinance concerning the processing of PUD applications. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about this.
So currently, if there is the slightest inconsistency, you're saying it would go back through this process?
Well, there's always some room for interpretation as to what's going to what's going to constitute a major revision. The deletion of a street is a major item. At that point, you've not only got the fact that the street is one of your circulation arteries, it's also going to be, in some cases, how you manage drainage on site. It's going to have a knock-on effect for grading, and therefore, yeah, the deletion of a street is going to trigger the need to go back for reapproval of a preliminary. But, for example, if someone proposed a preliminary plan, a 53-foot right-of-way for a street, and at final it came in at 55, I don't think we would consider that a major change to what had been approved.
And is there, who's going to make the determination on the consistency?
The determination will be made by the zoning administrator, who is our city administrator. And obviously, he will be advised by planning and engineering staff regarding that.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff?
So if I understand this correctly, the only thing we're doing is allowing a one-time adjustment to this without having to go back through the process, barring any major.
You're allowing, after approval of either a preliminary plat or a preliminary PUD, a one-year period of time where all of the dedications that would vest in association with that preliminary are going to be valid and against which the land use owner could file the final. Now, once they filed the final, to the extent that that final is or is not consistent with the preliminary, that'll force this down one path or the other, either back for reapproval as a preliminary or it gets processed administratively as a final.
So there could be multiple changes.
Well, there could be multiple changes, but again, they're going to be evaluated on how significant are they compared to what was approved with preliminary.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
What are your thoughts about interpretations of changes, even if they're, no matter how slight? I mean, the thought comes to mind about city reputation and relationships with area people. You know, we've had a number of public hearings where a number of neighbors came along and, you know, expressed their opinions. Is there a way to define, I guess, from a public perspective, what would be allowable and what would require public hearing a little more succinctly, you know what I mean?
I understand what you mean. And Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in Title 17 there is a provision about administrative exceptions that, you know, if it falls within, I don't know, a 10% modification, that can be considered administrative in nature.
Yeah, there may be. I'm not like that familiar that I want to quote from that, but I think this is actually a very common practice, and the agency is unfortunately or fortunately entitled to great deference in what it does. And so I think it's a matter of, it could be a minor modification, but one that has a significant impact. So you could
Right.
move a lot line somewhere or a street line somewhere, but the impact is great. And so I think staff's not just looking at, you know, how many feet are you moving things, they're also saying, how does this impact everything that the bodies that saw it at the public process, you know, how they would interpret that. Would they kind of see it as a minor modification or a major one? And I think if it relates to an item that was maybe of contentiousness or something like that, staff can always say, you know what, this modification is to a significant component of this and can kick it up. I mean, I think staff has that kind of broad authority. I've seen it, most of the time it's not defined and kind of refined out. Some communities will like list out like what's a major and what's a minor, but they can't cover everything even when they do
Well, I don't
that.
know how you could.
Yeah, and so that's where
truthfully.
you kind of run into this problem. Unfortunately, it's never really been solved to anyone's satisfaction, I think. I think, you know, as lawyers, we prefer a little bit more, you know, fleshing it out, but you keep running into, oh, but I didn't think of this, or what about that?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think when it comes down to the idea itself, I'm all for it. It's just that there's always consequences, you know what I mean? And you can never predict who's going to say what, and you can never really protect yourself from who's going to say what, you know, because some people are going to get angry. But it's just a thought that crossed my mind that there was thought given to that to some extent, you know.
Well, it's important to note, on any given land use application, there is an intent behind what the applicant is attempting to achieve. There is a stated goal, and that stated goal is part of what you are evaluating the application against. So if it's a project that's going to have to come in multiple phases, a preliminary and then a final, you're going to evaluate the final again against that intent to make sure that what they've done hasn't altered the intent to such a significant extent that you have to go back and show this to the Planning Commission and Council. Obviously, in the nature of being customer service oriented, we would like to help them avoid that, but there may very well be circumstances where that can't be avoided, that they've changed something that's significant enough that as a gestalt, the entire application has a different flavor to it now.
Yeah, you can't protect from what you can't predict, I guess, to some extent,
Well, it's hard to balance that, right? Like, you're trying
Yeah.
to make it easier on applicants. Oh, you don't have to go through the public process.
It's
Well,
exactly
this
right.
is kind of like the other side of that
It's exactly
coin,
right.
is that, so the city gets a little flexibility in determining to make sure that your final is conforming to your preliminary. And I think staff will, if they do get a final and it's on the fence, or they're thinking, you know, it really needs to be modified, I would, knowing staff as I do, I think they would try to work with them and try to sort it out at the final, rather than being like, okay, you're going to have a public hearing next week, too bad, you know, that kind of thing, so.
I'm all for streamlining, you know, and I think you guys can handle any things that come up Commissioner Harmon's talking about. So. Any other questions of staff? Any comments from the audience? No? Okay.
Didn't know you had anybody back there. Huh?
So I need a motion and a second pertaining to Resolution Number 2, Series of 2019.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt Planning Commission Resolution Number 2, Series of 2019.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Do I have a second?
No, I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Randy Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Herman?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley?
Aye.
So that's our recommendation. The council has passed.
Nice.
Let's see. Any announcements? Any discussion?
Just to clarify, so did you motion to approve the resolution?
I adopt the Planning Commission resolution. I did not make
So you
the
still
next
need to
one.
do your
We still
recommendation
need
on the
to do
ordinance,
one
because
more.
we have to
Oh, right,
modify both the
right.
code and the subdivision.
I jumped
Sorry.
ahead. So, no, you're right.
I was ready, too.
I got excited because there was nothing left on the agenda.
Sorry. 2 more minutes.
Okay.
I'd like
So
to-
at this time, I need a second, motion and a second for recommendation to council, please.
I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Chairman. I move the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the draft ordinance amending Section 17.16 of the Canyon City Municipal Code pertaining to the processing of final PUD applications.
I will second that.
Thank you. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Randy Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Herman?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Anybody have any announcements or discussion? Then we are adjourned.
We will have several items for hearing at the next meeting, so nobody can go on vacation next month.